Lyra, I was so impressed with your letter. I didn't want to just read it on the television. I wanted you to read it to me, and I want people to hear it from your voice. I thought that was a really important message that people need to hear right now.
Dear Mr. Molinaro, I am Lyra. I am 7 years old, almost 8, and I am in 2nd grade. I remember that you came to my school, Wingdale Elementary School, and you read all the places you'll go. I have that book and I love to read it. It was fun seeing you there. I love to dance, sing, and perform on stage. I also have a little brother. His name is Troy and he is 4 years old. My favorite animals are red pandas, seahorses, pandas in general, otters, seals, and dolphins. I want you to know that our family has been talking about current events around the country in regard to racial injustice. Please know that we believe all people should be treated equally no matter what color their skin is. We thank you for supporting all people in our county and ask that you continue to go one step more because we have a lot of work to do. I think that a great idea would be to write a letter to everyone in our county to remind them to be kind to one another and listen to ideas that would create a positive change. Thank you for taking the time to read my letter. Sincerely, Lyra.
Thank you, Lyra. That was beautiful. And I want you to know that there are going to be a lot of people who are going to see this and they're going to be very touched. And hopefully they're going to take that first step too. For joining us again. We'd like to get right into it, give you an update. If you have a question, you want to add it, excuse me, to the comment section there underneath the live feed, go right ahead. We'll get to as many questions as we can. We opened with that clip. I will tell you that Lyra just so impressed me. She sent a letter, as you know, and you saw earlier in this week. She and her mom spent time talking about current events, and very grateful to Kimberly for encouraging her daughter to write to us. And I think it's important that we take the opportunity to, recognize Lyra's willingness to speak so openly. I'll say this up front. I just attended via Zoom the funeral for legislator Barbara Jeter Jackson. Barbara was a remarkable woman who went places in Dutchess County as an African-American woman that no one had gone before, leading her caucus and being a leader here throughout the county and in the city of Poughkeepsie, but also was in her own right just an inspirational and kind and caring woman. She lived out Martin Luther King's creed of living, a life filled with a heart of love and a soul filled with grace. She would remind us that being kind to each other is likely more important than anything else we can do. And I think Lyra just reminded us yet again. So I will tell you, I certainly respond to as many comments as we can. We try to get to as many questions as we can, and I recognize the anger and anguish and really the fear and some people outright hate that they have. I'm hopeful that we can cut through it, acknowledge it, but also, as Lyra encourages, perhaps just be a little friendlier to each other. And as we deal with this ongoing crisis, and it is both a public health emergency, and it is a financial emergency, and it is a real economic emergency to many, my hope is that we can find it within ourselves to extend just a little bit more kindness and to be a little bit more friendly in our interaction. And I suspect that with that, someone is saying that I should shut up, and others are saying that it's a good idea. But I do think more than ever now, we can see the heart of this country broken up. And no matter what it is you believe, no matter where it is you fall on the spectrum of ideas, we've got to find ways to work together. And I'd also would acknowledge to you that as leaders, and that is not a title, it's simply a description, we all have to do a little bit better. And I think myself included will acknowledge for you that in so many ways, Lyra is a great example that we as leaders have to live up to what Lyra expects of us and what all of you expect of us. So let's jump right in. to some of the data. I think you're aware. We'll put up the dashboard so that you know where we are. We've tested now nearly 35,000 individuals. Thankfully, that transmission rate has been on a steady decline. Hospitalizations are at the lowest point we've seen since really beginning early in March at 29 individuals hospitalized with COVID-19 and currently 1,328 active cases. All of that I think it's important that we monitor. We certainly are going to watch those data points as we proceed over the course of the next several weeks. You know that the state of New York has a series of benchmarks and a metric that they use. We fall in this Mid-Hudson region. 7 counties fall within the Mid-Hudson region. We currently are still well within those 7 basic benchmarks. Those are the ones that the state used to sort of trigger this transition and incremental reopening. They updated the dashboard this past week to include a monitoring system that I will tell you I find very useful. It's very helpful. It's an effort to look at certain benchmarks over a rolling average, a longer length of time, so that you can kind of look back and really begin to project moving forward. The good news in this case is that we fall still well below all of those indicators in the Mid-Hudson region is not seeing any incline. It's been regular decline or plateau of those particular, of both hospitalizations and the transmission of the disease. So, based on the state's metrics, you likely know that we fall within what is currently determined as Phase 1. This is the low-risk opening of certain business activities. You know basically what they are. Many people having gone back to work that fall within these categories of businesses. We are slated to begin Phase 2, if you will, on June the 9th. Now, I will tell you, the leaders in the Hudson Valley region continue to ask the state to accelerate Phase 2. In fact, because Phase 2 now includes outdoor dining, and I'll talk about that in a moment, we'd like to see Phase 2 begin this weekend. So if we'll continue to voice that concern, we'll continue to encourage that to happen. But again, we are officially moving forward with Phase 2 businesses, which we'll talk a little about what they include, but that'll begin on June the 9th, including outdoor dining. And Phase 2 includes professional offices and other businesses. But let's talk a little bit about the outdoor dining as we can. Several weeks ago, the leaders in the Hudson Valley region came to the state leadership, the regional rooms, if you will, the state and the governor's representatives, and we outlined a series of steps that we wanted to take in order to advance outdoor dining early. In fact, originally outdoor dining was to begin in Phase 3. The state, based on our requests and the lobbying of the New York State Restaurant and Tavern Association, the governor took that, accepted that, and advanced outdoor dining early. So for us, being able to move now to outdoor dining on June 9th. Now, we've established a plan to open Main Street, and we've been working with towns, villages, and cities here in Dutchess County where we've identified any local obstacle for outdoor dining. So the state is going to allow restaurants to make use of their existing patio space and really any space they can either have right to, ownership, release, or have a partnership to make use. So we're trying to get those obstacles out of the way, and we've been working with our towns, villages, and cities to make those opportunities available. So if there's some local prohibition on converting a parking lot into a dining space or expanding out into a sidewalk or even making use of a parking lane or an entire roadway, if the municipality has asked for it, I'm signing on Monday an executive order that will waive those local regulations and allow the businesses to open up out onto the streets or into the sidewalks, municipality by municipality. So Jennifer asked about stopping traffic in Beacon to make room for outdoor dining. We are willing to do that, but it is up to Beacon and the leadership in Beacon. So if they decide that there's a street or a roadway that they want to close in order to allow businesses to set up outdoor dining on that roadway, I've extended an executive order that would permit that to happen. They just need to identify the road and the conditions by which they want it to opened or closed to traffic, but open for dining, and we will do it. So this plan to open Main Street is something we've worked on really hard. We really pushed the state to get going on it. We're grateful that it's not moving in Phase 3, but rather Phase 2. The Liquor Authority is given some latitude, and we're going to work with businesses to make sure that they don't get in the way, and that ultimately that we can expand that outdoor dining. So, for instance, if you have 50 seats in your restaurant and a porch that only can seat 10, and you can work with the municipality, like in Poughkeepsie, they're going to share some private space, or in Tivoli, they're going to close down the middle of Broadway for a period of time. You can move those 40 seats out onto the dining area that's being created, and I will have an executive order that allows that to happen. And we're just trying our best to take advantage of what opportunities we can have. So, Phase 2, as I said, we asked for the outdoor dining. It includes outdoor dining. Also in Phase 2, again, you can have that outdoor dining. You can also have on-premises, as we said, service. You can still do curbside and delivery. We've talked a little bit about what restaurants are able to do. As I said, municipalities are going to be making available new opportunities, but Phase 2 includes all professional spaces, so professional offices, including now all retail, which will include delivery, curbside, in-store pickup service, and in-store shopping, so long as they meet certain basic safety precautions. So professional space, real estate offices, retail, vehicle sales and lease and rental, as we said, retail rental, repair and cleaning, commercial building management, and hair salons and barbershops. I will tell you up front that category, hair salons and barbershops, there's a high bar that the states has set. I joined Senator Serino and others in saying that bar needs to be lowered a little. Certainly, the level of testing requirement is something that just isn't affordable for many of these individuals, and they've got to get up and running. So we understand the safety precautions. Believe me, our public health department monitors this daily. In fact, under state law, we're the ones that are required to oversee public health. It's mandated that we do that. We feel that we can provide barbers and hairdressers that ability to get their job done without the heavy burden that Albany has placed on them, so we're going to continue to argue that. Now, the other thing I want you to know is under Phase 2, and we've received many questions. In fact, I spoke to Mike Boyce earlier in the week and Adam at Graceland Tattoos. I don't have a tattoo, but I seem to be talking to tattoo artists more lately. Currently, Phase 2 does not include what I'll call those other personal care businesses. It isn't spas and massage therapists, and it isn't tattoo parlors. We believe it should be, so I want to be clear. We believe from a public health risk, if you will, that personal care industry should all fall in this category, and that we can take steps to make sure that they're supported and can reopen. The state has not said that yet. So, is it possible that could happen? Certainly, but it isn't on June the 9th. So as of today, those personal hygiene, personal care businesses don't get to open under the state order with hairdressers and hair salons. Christine, will outdoor graduations be allowed after July? First, I will tell you, I know there are a lot of questions. I have absolutely no objection to working on outdoor graduation, certainly in the month of July. In fact, we would support school districts doing that, but the state has made clear currently the only kinds of graduations that can occur are these at this point, which are a drive-in style, meaning you go to a drive-in space or to a parking lot and in a vehicle setting, have that ceremony, and a lot of them are doing that. Or some sort of caravan or convoy kind of parade-like activity. Some are doing that. The state has provided guidance that we've sent out to school districts, so I want to be clear. If it's a vehicle-oriented graduation, graduates can exit their vehicle, cross a stage to get a diploma, get that photograph that of course, everybody wants, and then return to their vehicle. We believe that school districts can logistically make that happen, but the state has provided that as sort of an opening, and we're taking advantage of it and saying to school districts that you are permitted to do that. So if you're having a drive-in graduation, you can get out of the car and walk up, cross the stage, and be handed a diploma. That is absolutely appropriate under the current guidance. Now, the governor said yesterday that they are considering whether or not in-person graduations can occur in July. So all I would offer to you is that school districts need to make that decision and need to do what they think is best for them and their graduating seniors. So I can't tell you today that the state of New York is going to authorize in-person graduations. I can only tell you that yesterday the governor said that that is something they are considering for the month of July, but that is not something that they've issued any protocols. I will offer to you as we get closer, Dutchess County stands ready to work with the school district. If those plans change or those orders change quickly, we'll try to be of as much assistance as we can. I feel for you. I really do. I know how valuable and important that high school graduation is. I know that there are people whose hearts are broken because you're not having that traditional graduation. Those are the rules as established by the state of New York and the governor, and we've talked about this. The state legislature in March gave the governor enormous authority that I think needs to be, it was temporary, and it's time to turn it off. Going into this crisis, saying that you want to have that kind of authority in order to limit certain activities, in order to move quickly to respond to the crisis, that may well have been logical. I can tell you that supervisors and mayors here in Dutchess County liked going into that emergency, that we were coordinating under the umbrella, if you will, of county activity. But as we begin the reopening, and we need to obviously move forward with reopening, relinquishing that authority makes sense. Centralizing these decisions to one or two people in the entire state of New York just isn't practical, it's not logical, and it needs to end. So we're going to be asking people to join us in calling on the state legislature to now begin the process of rescinding that temporary authority to allow, again, the state to decentralize that decision-making. And why? Because the state of New York shouldn't be making the kind of granular or very micromanaged decisions that it is now being required to make. I mean, as we've talked about, and you've heard me, and some of you don't think I shout about it enough, you should be on the calls. But the truth is that, we can, as counties and regions, make some of these decisions within certain protocols. So using that metric and that dashboard that the state uses to evaluate numbers, the state could say to us as a region, here are low risk, you can move forward with this incremental low risk business and then move forward to the next step. Let us decide within those categories what works and what doesn't. We talked about tattoo shops versus hairdressers. You can trim my sideburns apparently on Tuesday, but you can't give someone a tattoo on their ankle. Those are the kinds of questions that I think public health officials can make with business owners. We can have a tennis lesson and a golf lesson and go to the beach, but you can't have an in-person graduation that could be orderly and structured, or you can't necessarily take part in some sort of special education therapies. And I'll get to Samantha's question in a moment. So we think that set the standard, allow the counties regionally to make those decisions, and let's move forward. And the reason that is because, again, that kind of decision-making shouldn't be left to three people in state government, and frankly, it doesn't need to be left to people in government. It can be, here are the standards, here's the expectation, you go out and live within them, and we'll make sure that you keep safe. Samantha asked about summer programs and summer school for those with special needs. We are continuing to argue this fight. I will tell you that the governor's office contacted me 2 days ago. They acknowledge the argument that we're making. They agree that there needs to be services. We are waiting for them to take the step. And I will tell you that what I've said is just this. I understand that there are a lot of decisions that you all in Albany need to make, in particular when it comes to education that is entirely governed by the state of New York and your local school district. That said, if you have time to create protocols to go to the beach, and you have time to create protocols to play golf or to play tennis, then make the time to create the guidance so that school districts can get back to providing special education summer school programming and allow teachers, students and their family with their therapists, occupational speech, behavioral therapists, those that are needed in order to provide these services, let them make those decisions within certain expectations. Failure to do that will forever set back many, many young people who need the services and need the support. Failure to do that will continue to put pressure on families who don't have the personal resources necessarily to provide that assistance. And failure to do that isn't just a violation of their education rights, which are enshrined in the state constitution. In my estimation, it is a violation of their very human rights, which are protected under the Americans with Disability Act, the IDEA under federal law for special education services, IDEA, and from my perspective, it has to happen. So I'm going to keep fighting. I'm going to ask you to reach out to your state legislators next week. We're going to make sure you have that contact information. We're going to remind you how to do that with the governor's office, and I am hopeful in the meantime that they finally move forward with encouraging school districts and working to make that happen. And I will be the first to celebrate it with you and to thank them when they finally get around to doing it. So it is something we're going to continue to fight. Has New York State issued guidance about how schools can open in the fall? Kathleen, they haven't issued guidance, but the CDC has said, the president has said, and local officials have said, governors and otherwise, that there needs to be a plan to reopen schools in the fall. And I will tell you that it is our expectation and hope that that does happen and that those standards and protocols are established. Jean, I'm sorry, apologize. Still confused about weddings are in phase 3 or phase 4. Jean, we believe that weddings, well, first of all, small wedding ceremonies can occur currently. So small wedding ceremonies, those are really small. And I'll be very honest with you. If you have a private wedding at your home, that's your business. Keep it with friends and family. But if you're talking about going out to a wedding venue, we believe currently that's in phase 4. Although again, keep in mind, phase 3 includes opening of restaurants, so there could be some small activities that happen in a restaurant. But social events like that are deemed phase 4, and they are currently online. You want to pull up that chart. They're currently online to begin here in the Mid-Hudson region on or around the 4th of July week. So likely in the July 7, 8, 9 time period, I think, is when we expect that phase 4, July 6 would be phase 4. Now, what I want you to know is that the Hudson Valley leadership, the county elected leaders, are trying to push again. We'd like outdoor dining to begin now. We think if it can happen on Tuesday, it can happen on Saturday. So we're encouraging that to happen. If that advances up the schedule a little bit, then we're hopeful phase 3 comes sooner than June 22nd, and that phase 4 would begin ahead of the 4th of July weekend. And we're going to push for that because we know how valuable that is from an economic and a social perspective, not to mention, I join you, that no better time than Independence Day to finally regain our total, we hope, degree of independence to get back to living safely, of course, but that's the goal. So we think phase 4, and we think that it's certainly possible to have larger scale events at venues with some capacity restrictions, and we're hopeful that happens and gets going. Eric, you did ask, Eric and I spoke earlier today, if it is the same Eric, regarding tattoo studios. We've explained, and I'll just rehash that, again, we think that the Mid-Hudson region, I personally, and our public health department, supports personal hygiene businesses, which we include tattoo parlors in the category, personal care. We think that they can function in phase 2. They are not yet approved by the state of New York for phase 2. So we're going to continue to fight for that and continue to push on that. But for now, there are no guidances yet for tattoo parlors to reopen yet. If the numbers don't spike after the protest, can we reopen faster? Well, Leanne, the answer is if the numbers don't go up regardless, we should be able to accelerate the reopening. And don't quote me, quote the governor. The governor of the state of New York was given this authority. He has said that the 2-week increments are just a rule of thumb. And there are those who have watched, and some have taken issue with me saying that it could be shorter than 2 weeks. There is no true, unquestioned science to the 2-week increments. Where the goal of those 2-week increments was just simply to slow the reopening so we hopefully didn't affect the numbers. So far, we've seen in other regions and in other states locally, again, let's stay locally, New Jersey and Connecticut, some advanced a little bit, some pulled back a little bit, but all are now ahead of us, and we have some data to point to. We're not seeing the kind of return of the illness and the return of the disease and the return of the transmission. So if those numbers don't spike at all, we should be able to reopen. I'll also say this out loud. If the numbers spike because of the public protests that have happened, the responsible thing is to say to those individuals who may have tested positive that you must quarantine. Do not spread the transmission so the rest of us can go out and live and continue to advance. And I also say this. We are not measured on new cases. Just understand, none of the benchmarks is new positive cases. It is the rate of transmission and it is hospitalization. So if individuals may have tested positive because of participating in a social event or a protest or some activity where they may have come into contact with somebody and contracted the disease, simply contracting it doesn't alter the benchmarks or the measurements. It's whether or not they have to be admitted to a hospital and end up in a hospitalization. That makes the difference, and that's what we're going to monitor. To that end, I know that many of you are supportive and disappointed that local leadership and law enforcement, that I participated in that exercise, that protest on Wednesday. I will tell you that I believe it was the right thing to do, to show solidarity. I continue to support individuals who want to express their opinions, and I say to you, if you're protesting the governor's action, you have every right to do that, and I support that as well. I also support law enforcement and the men and women in law enforcement, and Dutchess County supports your right to celebrate your differences. I don't know if you know this, but if you're watching, and if you allow me just a minute, this very building, the Dutchess County office building, is on Market Street in Poughkeepsie. Market Street in Poughkeepsie, where the Dutchess County Courthouse is the location where the delegation here in the state of New York ratified the Constitution. And one man argued that the ratification of that U.S. Constitution ultimately in 1787, should include a celebration, a distinguishing a document, a doctrine of individual rights. Alexander Hamilton, on this block, in this community, argued that is something that the Constitution must be ratified. If it is, it must include an individual doctrine of individual rights, and we celebrate those rights. All 10 of those Bill of Rights were born in a government sense, in a constitutional sense, right here on this block. So if you wonder whether or not Dutchess County has a long history in protecting those rights, we do. We also understand here, as every community does, that protesting and expressing your opinion for some injustice is absolutely appropriate, and it is right to give meaning to loss, but it is wrong to take someone else's life or to damage someone else's property. And we have good and decent men and women in law enforcement who are struggling every day to do their jobs well, and we are able to recognize both of those things at once. This is not a matter of picking sides. It's about a matter of doing what is right. And what I will offer to you, having participated in that exercise, I, like the mayor of Poughkeepsie, and I would suggest others, I did take a COVID-19 test, and we'll await those results. But to your point, again, new positives doesn't change the metric. It's whether or not individuals are hospitalized, and let's hope that we don't have any severity. Robert, any update on negotiations with Governor Cuomo in regard to reopening faster? Good. I think we kind of covered that. We believe that should happen. We're going to continue to press on it. We're going to do it again every day. Every day at 3 o'clock, we are on calls with the governor's office and state staff, making the case for small businesses in this county. And I know that it would be better if we could just, make it happen magically or somehow change the state's mind. But we're fighting. It's how we advance the open dining capacity. It's one of the things that I do believe you're going to see some advancement in some of these other categories. Special education, we received the call 2 days ago. I believe that they hear us. So we're going to keep fighting. You should keep fighting too, and you should encourage state legislators, local officials to speak out, and I will continue to do that with you. When will the Galleria open? Dave, currently Phase 2 does not include malls, but I think Phase 3 may. But if you have exterior access, so if you're a business in a mall and you have exterior access, you can open in Phase 2 under those protocols. We're working, Dutchess County's Business Alliance has been working with businesses. We're trying to create a scenario where you could open those interior malls with limited access so that we can have those businesses that may not have exterior access open as well. Sharon, what phase is yard sales? I don't know. I think Phase 4 is expected. I will say that there are people who are hosting tag sales. That's between you and your local municipality. But we believe, I think offhand, Phase 4 includes yard sales. Stephanie, youth sports, Phase 3. I'll be frank with you. We believe that youth sports can happen at the end of this month, but the state says Phase 4. So currently, youth activities like that are Phase 4. I will tell you, Dutchess County was prepared and remains prepared to permit summer day camps, and the state has authorized us the right to issue permits for summer day camps at the end of June. That's correct, right? The end of June. So what I'll offer to you is that from my perspective and our public health department's perspective, if you can have a summer day camp you can open up those youth activities around the same time. We are prepared to issue those permits with summer camps, but the state has to say yes, and they have not yet said yes. And so we're saying that should happen in concert with summer camps, but right now, phase 4. Gun shops, Don, I will tell you, gun shops should open as retail shops. I mean, in my opinion, they should be treated exactly the same as those other retail stores, which can open now. If the state has not issued a specific guidance on that, we will ask, and we will ask today. I'll ask Ron Hicks from the county's economic development team to make that specific request. If there is no relief on that, we'd like to treat those sporting shops, those gun shops, which exist throughout Dutchess County, certainly as the same as every other retail business, and they should be able to open in concert with those other retail businesses. Lori, is phase 2 definitely Tuesday? The governor said yesterday the Mid-Hudson Valley is on a clear path for Tuesday, June the 9th. It is possible that today, tomorrow, we see some massive number change, but I'm telling you, we will not look kindly on a delay. June 9th, Tuesday, the governor said yesterday, the Mid-Hudson region is slated for that. We are functioning from that, and I am telling businesses, in particular restaurants, get prepared for that outdoor dining component, which will begin on Tuesday, June 9th. Marianne, nail salons, I think I did kind of cover that, but I'll say it again. Right now, nail salons not covered in any phase. We think they should go hand in hand with phase 2, hairdressers, etc. The state has not said yet, but we believe that would be appropriate. Have Watson protesters caused any spike in COVID? Keep in mind, first of all, the disease doesn't necessarily present itself in just a couple of days. We do tell people, if you did participate in any of those social activities, so if you were involved in a protest, or maybe, by the way, you were at an event that was a large, dinner party, and believe me, I know there are people having events in their own backyards. If you feel like you've come into contact with individuals who may have transmitted or contracted the disease, you should be tested. It is more likely that you would see those numbers out 1 or 2 weeks from now, not 1 or 2 days from now. So we'll continue to monitor it. Several people want me to get a tattoo. Is that true? Thank you. I'm afraid to ask, but I'm going to ask anyway. Excluding a few of my friends, and you know who they are because I know how you would answer this question. I'd be interested in knowing what kind of tattoo you think I should get. And be kind. Let's take Lyra's advice. I am open to the concept of getting a tattoo when they open. I'm saying it out loud. I don't know why I feel so compelled to do that. I don't know if I just think it's funny. I feel badly. I do. I mean, in many ways, tattoo artists, of course, are artists. I feel badly that they're just sort of left out there. I thought, in one sense, again, why should government be in the business of dictating that kind of detail? But in the same respect, it's sort of like they're not getting the attention they deserve to reopen. So I don't mean to do this with a smile, but I'm open to it. Don and Dan, and there are a few others, please do not tell me what you really think I should get as a tattoo. But there are a few others, if you want to be honest about it. I'd be interested in your take. What would be the appropriate thing? Not the county seal. I'm not doing that. But I'd be open to that, and I would then have to, do some sort of contest to see which one of these great tattoo artists is going to paint me for life. I'm open to it. I am. Thanks for saying so. Joy, when can playgrounds open? Okay, so this is what I'll tell you out loud. Dutchess County's playgrounds, county park playgrounds are open. The state has not given clear direction on when they can open. Our parks are open. Kids are playing in them. We are not seeing a level of transmission among young people that our public health department is alarmed. It's nearly impossible to take a child to a park and have a playground over there and them not be able to use it. What we're asking people in Dutchess County parks, again, is to just be conscientious and be considerate. Try to limit activity so that you don't have large crowds. My advice to municipalities is to make that decision on your own. If you feel that it's appropriate, take down the fences, take off the tape, and just ask people to be kind, to be considerate, and to be respectful of other space. We are planning to, as you know, Quiet Cove is open. Dutchess County's Quiet Cove Park is open. We're limiting some of the access so that we can keep numbers down. But I'll also tell you that Lake Wilcox is scheduled to be open for swimming, assuming the bloom the algae bloom doesn't take over, which is a real thing and sadly has caused us years of problems. But also the water pad, the water feature at Bowden Park, we expect to open at the end of the month. maybe sooner, but at the end of the month, I will ask you to be kind and considerate. So our playgrounds are open, and we just ask you to be considerate of one another. Howard County buildings being maintained and cleaned to ensure those returning to work and visiting are safe. Nicole, we have put together a very extensive reconstitution plan that includes a lot of cleaning and upkeep. We're also limiting general public access for a period of time. So beginning June 15th, there'll be services that'll be available by appointment. We're asking you that if you are in a congregate setting, so hallways or bathrooms, we'd ask you to use a face covering. In offices, spaces, we're asking our employees, there'll be certain scenarios where face coverings will be appropriate, but we have a very extensive cleaning process, and we're going to stay up on top of it. We're also going to ask employees, you've got to do it for yourselves too. And I'd say this to you, anyone. Whether you work at a restaurant or in a government building, we don't have and we haven't hired the hand sanitizer distribution team or the wipe off your phone with a Kleenex, a Clorox wipe team. You'll need to do it yourselves, and we encourage you to do that to keep your own space clean to your liking. But generally speaking, very high standard for recleaning. Valerie plan for COVID tracers. We're already using contact tracers. We've used them for years on other infectious diseases. They're being used now as new cases come forward. We identify that positive case. We ask them who they may have come into contact with, and then we encourage them, those individuals, to take a test if they prefer, and to try to lower their social interaction. Beatrice, church. We have asked the state, and again, we believe that this is absolutely appropriate. We asked on Sunday for the governor to begin allowing houses of worship to open with limited capacity. No action yet. I think that is wrong. I think it is time to open those houses of worship with limited capacity. In fact, before we made the request to the governor, I called our commissioner of health. He's an infectious disease doctor, and I said, limited capacity at a church. Could we make that work? He was comfortable making that work. And I just think now more than ever, having those houses of worship available, not at full capacity yet, but available for people. We could redirect some anxiety. We can get young people engaged. We can talk to those people, those believers, and really engage faith leaders. As I said, I participated in a Zoom funeral, and I love Jesse Bottoms at Beulah Baptist Church, but I know even he is struggling, having to communicate only through this virtual meeting experience. And so we believe that they should be open to some capacity now. You can still have vehicle-based services. I will say out loud, we believe that whether you're in the vehicle or seated immediately adjacent to your vehicle, that is appropriate for a house of worship, and that is something that you can engage in. Carrie, dance studios, which phase? Right now, they would be phase 4 as a recreation or event kind of activity. Or a school or education kind of activity. We hope that they'll be able to be in effect earlier, but right now it's phase 4. I will tell you, because I know there are a couple gyms that are here, if you operate a summer camp, meaning that you have a program where it's a summer camp activity, you can be permitted for that to happen. So you really assess what you do as a business and whether or not you want to fall in that camp category, a day camp category. Some do, and you would be able to get permitted but there's a higher standard for that, right? It's not just opening your doors, but you'd be permitted to do that. Stacy and a number of people have asked about jail visitation, and I apologize. I owe you a response. We're going to ask the sheriff's office when they intend to have visitor access. I'm going to bet on or around June 15th. I know that's a long time, but I'm going to bet it's around that timetable, and I will get you an answer, and I apologize I haven't gotten that to you sooner. I do remember seeing that message. Regina, I've been going to Connecticut. They're reopened. You hate not shopping. What can people do? Regina, I want you to spend your money in Dutchess County. If you want things to happen faster, call your state legislator and reach out to the governor's office. Please continue to communicate with us. We'll argue the point. We think that we should open as quick as is safe. Some of you obviously want it faster, some want it slower. We do think that certain businesses can be open, but here's the good news in the Mid-Hudson region. Next Tuesday, June 9th, we're taking that next big step, which I think is important. Restaurants, retail, professional space will all have greater opportunities to be open. You'll see a little bit more of that, haircuts, etc. I will tell you the only one I've gotten is the one my wife gave me, and she didn't want me to say that because she didn't think she did so well, but I thought she did just fine. So, Nikki, when will bus service return? Tomorrow. Is that right? Tomorrow, June 6th. Full bus service returns tomorrow, June the 6th. We're going to extend the no fare, so there will not be a fare on the buses for the next couple of weeks as we get back into full service, but you'll see that full transit service begins tomorrow, June 6th. If we are in phase 4, do we still have to wear masks? Ask Megan. So let me offer this. Right now, you're being instructed by the governor's office to wear a mask if you're in a place where you can't social distance. That is not a mandate that you wear a mask in your car. It is not a mandate that you wear a mask at home. It isn't a mandate that you even wear a mask on the road, sidewalk. And please, to those of you who feel that wearing a mask is wrong, I respect your opinion. For those who feel that you must wear it at all times, we respect your opinion. But this is very much, at the moment, right? So currently, very much a matter of choice and consideration, except the instruction is if you're in a place like a retail business, the business, as said the state, does have the right to ask you to wear a face covering to come inside. They still have to accommodate in some way. Of course, if you have an underlying illness or a disability that precludes you from wearing that, you have every right to be honored, and no one has any right to ask you what your underlying illness or your disability is. Some may think that that is sort of an open door. Some may think it's not, but that is the law. The law is that if you have an underlying ailment, you have no responsibility to tell someone. The business has a responsibility to accommodate you to some degree. That doesn't mean you just throw the door open and run in. It just means that, again, within that current order. I believe that as we get to the phase 3 and the phase 4 categories, yes, absolutely, those sort of strict guidances will be relieved. However, wear one as we get further along in phase 3 and phase 4. If those change, wear one if you think you want to and should. Don't wear one if you don't want to. But I would ask you to please be respectful of the differences of opinion people have. I believe wearing a face covering when it's possible is appropriate. I also know people screw up, right? We all make mistakes. We all have opportunities where that's not going to happen. I apologize if at times I'm not the best example of that. I hope you would too, because those people who have complained that maybe I didn't wear a mask when I should have, or some of the same people who don't think you should wear a mask at all. Some people think you should wear a mask all the time or not all the time. Listen, do your best. Just do your best. And be respectful that there are those who might disagree. But please, face coverings when social distancing isn't possible and physical distancing when it is possible. But I do believe that those restrictions will be less as we move along in these phases. Let me offer DMV. You may know the Department of Motor Vehicles is actually a state office administered here in Dutchess County by the county clerk, Brad Kendall. We expect that in-person transactions will occur in phase 3. You should start to see some activity back here at the Poughkeepsie, Wappinger, and Millbrook locations. I think that is true, in and around the middle to end of June. I hope Brad doesn't, Brad will correct me if I'm wrong, but June 15th, you'll see some more activity here at the Poughkeepsie office, and then this phased approach, and we'll continue to monitor from there. If you have other questions, please write in the comment under the live stream. We'll get to as many questions as we can. We are trying to obviously be as helpful as we can. So we've covered, I think, a lot of what we expected to cover. Are there more questions? We're happy to get to them. As we wait for more questions, I want to acknowledge the Dutchess. First, we've got wonderful volunteers. Dutchess County's Medical Reserve Corps has been one at the heart of our volunteer service, and I want to acknowledge and thank and congratulate Joe Ryan. Joe is our Medical Reserve Corps coordinator. He's also a Mets fan. The Mets have had the best season in a long time right now. Joe was acknowledged and awarded the Mentor Award. This is the National Medical Reserve Corps has honored Joe with its Mentor Award this past Tuesday. The MRC has already coordinated and recorded, volunteer hours of has already recorded more volunteer hours in all of 2019. So keep in mind, just this year, Medical Reserve volunteers have already, halfway through the year, conducted more hours of volunteer service than in all of 2019. They played a vital role in our response to this crisis. And we want to thank Joe and the 700 now MRC volunteers for all that you do. And if you want to join us and you want to volunteer, you can volunteer at dutchessny.gov. duchess.ny.gov/MRC. You just actually go to duchess.ny.gov, visit the COVID-19 Resource Center and Resource Services, and you'll see an opportunity to volunteer. So, Christian Martial Arts Studios, again, there are a couple martial arts studios that operate actual camps. They're identified as camps, they're permitted as camps, and they can open as camps once permitted by the health department, which is standard, the end of this month. Generally speaking, martial arts studios are not permitted to open yet until phase 4, unless that speeds up, and it is possible it does. Susie asking about gyms. I said this every time. I'm a gym goer, and right now we believe gyms fall in phase 4, in the phase 4 category, and we're waiting from the state for any other direction on that. But we believe it falls in the phase 4 category, and we'll keep you posted. Joe is asking where COVID tests are being done. If you visit duchessny.gov and you go to COVID resources, you'll see the testing opportunities, including a link to those locations. You can be tested in multiple locations. You can also check with your physician. So if you are, if you do have a physician and you want to call and check in, they may be able to administer that test. Otherwise, if you visit duchessny.gov /coronavirus testing, you'll see an opportunity and a location where you can be tested. We continue to operate. Excuse me one second. We continue to operate our testing sites at Dutchess Stadium, Pulse MD, Mid-Hudson Regional Hospital, and then a number of locations throughout Dutchess are available to you. Take advantage of those. Jackie, do businesses have to open? Can we be penalized for staying closed? You don't have to open. You can choose to remain closed. However, you should be aware that some benefits, meaning the federal government Paycheck Protection Program and some unemployment benefits, are related to the fact that you are forced to be closed. So if you're no longer mandated to be closed, you may not be able to receive, and I'm not saying that this is for certain in every category, but in every instance, but you may not be able to receive certain unemployment or PPP or other federal resources. So if you've gotten access to the federal Paycheck Protection Program, or you are receiving unemployment, you really should check with whomever those contacts are if you choose to stay closed, even though you're able to now open. Because again, the reason some of these benefits existed was because you were forced and mandated to remain closed. So be prepared for asking those questions. If you would like some of our assistance, visit DuchessBNN.com, the Dutchess Business Notification Network, DuchessBNN.com. We'll try to give you some guidance and be of some assistance to you. We've been running this network now, thousands of businesses since the beginning of COVID-19 and this emergency, providing direct assistance to thousands upon thousands of businesses, trying to give you what guidance we can. Tanya, what are the guidelines for large gatherings? I'm confused. Aren't we all? Listen, formal gatherings that are structured and that are permitted, yes, are supposed to be limited in size. I recognize that it is confusing because on television you see, and even you saw me participate in a protest. What I would offer to you, and again, some people don't necessarily agree with me. There are instructions for those events and activities that are structured and scheduled and coordinated, and you can choose to follow those guidances or not. I'm going to encourage you to choose to follow those guidances as I hope to follow those guidances. In a setting like a protest, and a protest is an eruption of emotion. It is not something that is always organized in the way that you would want. It's not the same as a walk over the walkway or a social gathering. So I know that it's confusing and it is contradictory. The reality is that the expression of anger that many people have after that horrible incident in Minneapolis has led, obviously, to an eruption of emotion that has resulted in countless protests, both peaceful and not peaceful, in parts of the country. We, thankfully, here in Dutchess have so far experienced relatively peaceful, in fact, I think peaceful activities that is not something that we're able to stop. I said this last time, it's sort of like a wave crashing on the beach. We can try to manage it, but we're not going to stop it. But if you have the choice to organize an event, if you want to coordinate an event, that is not yet something that's encouraged until phase 4. So we did that. We talked a little bit about contact tracers. Nancy, will I encourage grocery stores to continue offering senior hours? Yes, I will. I do think that it's important that retailers recognize that while we're still living in this sort of emergency setting, there are vulnerable populations, and if you can accommodate them, you should. Senior citizens absolutely should remember that using a face covering is appropriate, social distancing is appropriate, that in particular seniors we know can contract the disease. If you have an underlying illness, you can be more susceptible to a more severe onset of the disease, so we encourage you to take those precautions, but we also encourage retailers and grocery stores to continue to offer those special hours and provide some additional outreach to seniors in those populations. Lindsay, where can I find reopening guidelines? Visit duchessny.gov. Go to Restarting Duchess. You'll see when you visit duchessny.gov, there are a series of tabs. Go to Restarting Duchess. There is a Business Resources tab, and within those business resources will be our guidance to you, which is not complicated and it does not contradict the state guidelines. And within those state guidelines, you'll see the recommendations they have for different businesses. As you open, whether you are deemed essential, and I hate that term, so whether you've been already approved or being approved to reopen, you should have a safety plan on file in your business, and you are supposed to complete an attestation, meaning you've signed something that basically says, yes, I have a safety plan, yes, I've read this, thank you very much. And that provides the state a little bit of discretion, obviously, to say that you know what your safety plan needs, you know that you need to have one and that you do have one, and that you're going to honor it. So duchessny.gov, Restarting Duchess tab, and then the Business Resource Guide in there will help you. Please also sign up for duchessbnn.com. Visit Duchess Business Notification Network, duchessbnn.com to sign up, and every day you'll get an update with that information and new information. Will there be additional health department inspectors to make sure businesses are keeping COVID precautions in place? We are not hiring more people. We are not hiring. We're not hiring more people. The health department is going to continue to reach out to small businesses, and we're going to continue, Peggy, to interact with them to make sure that they adhere to those safety precautions. Based on what I know, restaurant owners, business owners, employees, and the public will continue to communicate with us. I want you to be sensitive to this. We recognize that businesses need to open. We recognize that there's a public health risk, and we need to balance out both the concern for public health and the need to get back to living. And so that balance is going to demand discretion. It's going to demand consideration. So I will be very upfront with you and very candid. I don't think it's appropriate to post pictures online of business owners who you think did or didn't follow the rules. I think that you should, as a customer, ask what their safety plan is and see if they're following it. And if they're not following it, you can choose to shop or go someplace else, or you can choose to encourage they do that and use that choice. I say the same thing to employees. Please, at the end of the day, take the step to be considerate. These, first of all, businesses have had their livelihoods put on hold, and many of whom are being affected in devastating ways. They need to be able to open. They want to do it in a safe way. Please honor them and try to be supportive of them. At the same time, please let's not devolve into attacks against one another. I've said this before. I'm comfortable with you attacking me. That is my job to accept that. But I think that we should be kind about it. So please, like a good neighbor, reach out first and say to the business owner, what's your safety plan? You're scheduled to go to get a haircut. If you're concerned about your own public health, ask them what steps have they taken. If you're comfortable with that, make the choice. And if you're not comfortable with that, ask them maybe to address your concern before we take the step of sort of squabbling and quarreling online. Now, use social media for all its good parts, good, and we accept that it's an area, a way to vent our anger and frustration. Let's just be kind. I cannot stress this enough. Our kids are watching us. And I'll tell you, my kids, asked the question about social distancing. Well, Dad, you didn't follow it the other day. You're right. I was wrong. But the reason I was wrong in not adhering to that guidance, but in the same respect, I had to make a choice, and this is why I made that choice. And my children learned the lesson that I offered to them, that sometimes we have to express both respect for those who have outrage, but sometimes we need to express our own outrage. Same to you. Just keep in mind our kids are watching all of it, and to the extent that we could be good examples of them, we're going to have to be. And I know that there's somebody already saying, shut up, move on, but nevertheless, that's not something I intend to do. Susie, will there be a second stimulus check? Congress is debating that now. The hope is in July or by July that they will have a next round of assistance. There's no question there are people who need relief. I will tell you, county government needs that help. Next week, we're going to start talking to you about the budget implications. I know many of you have opinions about this. We are staring at as much as a $75 million budget hole in the middle of our budget year. So we are going to be making some very tough choices. Nothing is sacred because we don't have the resources to support everything at 100%. So we're going to look at prioritizing. We're asking departments and elected officials to look at their departments. How can we save dollars? How can we conserve resources even further? We'll talk more about that. But you as a resident and as a citizen do need the federal government to come in. I know that there are tenants who've been paying rent. How you've been able to do it is, obviously has been a struggle. There are landlords out there saying, well, my tenant hasn't paid anything. You've got to be respectful. If the money's not coming in, they can't hand it over. So I hope the federal government will provide an opportunity for greater relief, even if it's sort of restarting the clock, right? Set ourselves back and just sort of start over again. But that said, which by the way has happened in our history, just so you know, Congress and has taken steps to sort of reset the clock, and it's possible that you can do that from a governmental perspective. But I will say to landlords and tenants, please work it out. Landlords, please work it out. Right now, evictions are not permitted, but especially for businesses and individuals who are without a paycheck, once they start getting paid again, coming right after them for the last 4 months, I know that's tough on you. Please work it out so that we don't create a scenario where people are going back to work, opening their doors, and are suddenly just being hit by the challenge that still looms over them. Believe me, anyone who's not paying rent or isn't able to pay their bills isn't doing it because they don't want to under these circumstances. They're doing it because they don't have a lot of choices, and we need to be respectful to the extent we can. Both sides. The landlord needs to pay his bills or her bills as well. John, do camps have to social distance? Where are the rules? There are some summer camp guidances online, but the short answer is we expect that staff and organizers engage in the protocols, just like, for instance, you're going to a restaurant. Servers are being asked to wear face covering. Tables are being asked to be separated, but people at that table don't have to wear a mask when you're going out to eat. Kids at a summer camp are not going to social distance in all activities, so we acknowledge that, and I think the state is smart to acknowledge that. So we just want other steps taken to keep people safe, but there is no expectation. I'll say this: there's no expectation you're going to wear a mask to play soccer or lacrosse, but maybe the counselor or the coach may have to wear a face covering. And certainly if you're a vulnerable population, you're being asked not to participate in those activities. Those are the steps that we know are being encouraged, and you can visit duchessny.gov, business resources, under Restarting Duchess, and we'll give you some direction. We have 1 or 2 minutes left, so we'll take any last questions. We've talked about that, about additional staff. Any last questions we have, we'll take them. In the meantime, if you have questions we didn't get to today, reach out to us through duchessny.gov. I will say that I'm trying my best online to respond to you. There are a number of us in county government who respond through our communications staff. If you're tagging me on Facebook, I don't always see it, but I will say if you tag Marcus Molinaro, it actually is me, and I try to the extent I can to give you answers. I understand that some of you feel that my answers are really good, and some don't think they're good at all, and I'll accept all of that, but our goal is to try to get you what we know as we know it. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it isn't. Why can camps open but not special needs schools? I'm going to end on this note yet again. Because there is no logic. The state of New York has yet to develop protocols and guidances for special education services this summer. I don't I've talked to many of you for weeks now, and some of you know this, and some of you don't. I am blessed with 4 wonderful children in my life. One of them is a child with a disability. Won't go into any more detail other than to say that every day she receives great services through her therapist, but I know that her services would be made better if she can do some of them in person. Now, she's able and has learned how to use the technology and the tools to be helpful to her. But we fear certain regression because of the lack of social interaction. That isn't just, understand that, yes, social interaction is exceptionally important for young people and the development of young people. When it comes to the ability to connect with an individual who has an IEP or some special education service requirements, that social interaction can be absolutely critical to the delivery of that service. We believe today that the state of New York should have already established those protocols and expect school districts with parents and teachers and providers to have those programs in place. They don't. And I agree with you that if it's okay to establish summer camps and to say at the end of this month you can have summer camps, then it is right to demand that the same expectation exists and that we should meet that same goal of doing it for summer school special ed for those who want it and need it. Not every child will need that. Not every child will want that. Not every family will want to subject them to that. But that is a choice that you should be able to make because the right to that special education service is constitutionally protected in the state of New York, and it is protected by federal law that dates back to the 1980s. So we are demanding the state and this governor create the protocols necessary to establish summer school education programs, and we will not stop. Now, 2 days ago, the governor's office advised me that they absolutely embrace this and are going to move forward with establishing those protocols. And I'm not only going to hold them to it, but I'm going to thank them when they do it. So when you're watching today, and if you have a demand or an issue that you want addressed, and you want, for instance, special education services, you can do 3 things. And next week, we're going to tell you, we'll have a slide that expresses exactly how you communicate, because there are a few things that we need to have done. You can tell your state legislator. We have 2 senators and a handful of assembly members who represent Dutchess County. You should reach out to them and you should say to them, enough, I want the state to create the guidelines. If you can have guidelines for tennis and you can have guidelines for hairdressers, all very important, then you must and you should have already had guidelines for summer school special education services. 2, you can reach out to the governor directly and we'll give you that email and phone number. And because if that doesn't happen by next week, we're going to have to demand more, and we're going to have to stand up even and shout even louder. And 3rd, you can communicate with us, me. So you can send an email or communicate with us, and we will continue to make this point. I promise you it is not something that I'm going to give up on. It is not something I'm backing down from. And the governor's office and local leaders know that. So please continue as parents and advocates to do that. Please continue to express your concern. Please continue to visit with us on Wednesday and Friday. We will see you here next Wednesday. Again, telephone town hall and Facebook Live the following Friday. Telephone town hall and Facebook Live. Next Friday is a Facebook Live, not telephone town hall. And in the meantime, get prepared for Phase 2 on June the 9th. Support local businesses if you have the resources. Local businesses need our help now more than ever. They have taken a hit, and they've done it, many willingly. Most certainly didn't want to have to do it, but they did it. And now as they reopen, if we have money in our pockets, and many people don't, but if you have a choice, choose to spend your money with your neighborhood store, your neighborhood hairdresser, your neighborhood restaurant, your neighborhood tattoo parlor when they get open. Make sure you do that because they're going to need our help. And if we have the ability to support them, please join us in doing that. In the meantime, stay safe, be well, and be kind to each other.